Hello, welcome to another session of Soul Sessions with Creative Mind. I'm Deborah Maldonado. I'm here with Rob Maldonado, PhD, and we are continuing our series on how to succeed without losing your soul.
That's right. That's the trick. How to succeed, but to
Keep your
keep
soul.
your soul.
You don't want to
Exactly.
lose it. Not that you can lose it, but just a metaphor here. Today we're talking about purpose, how to live your purpose. It's a big question we get a lot. What is the purpose? We're going to talk about how people misinterpret what their purpose is, and how the even if you find something you love, how your ego can sabotage it, and it really doesn't have that true purpose. It becomes more about fulfilling the ego's needs. So we're going to talk about all
Yeah.
that today.
Yeah. And the best way to talk about it is to tell you a little bit about our own experience and finding our purpose and living our purpose.
And most of the world is wired to just have enough, and we're conditioned from grade school on to basically learn how to be a worker. We're not really inspired, most of us, maybe in this new generation of children, but most of us weren't taught you can do anything you want, you can create anything you want. It was like, do your homework and make sure you show up on time, and then you'll be a great worker and get a paycheck and find a steady job, and that's rewarded. And most of us go through life, and about midlife we say, what the heck am I doing? Like, sitting in your office or doing some work, and there's this sense of emptiness or lack of fulfillment. And I think a lot of people have been experiencing that, especially with COVID and the pandemic and working from home, and asking the question, like, why am I commuting 3 hours a day for this job?
I always thought I was just a bad employee, but it was that I wasn't doing my purpose.
Yeah.
My purpose was not to be a worker or work for other people. My purpose is to fulfill my destiny, in essence, which is what we're going to be talking about.
So you knew early on that you were a terrible worker, and you would never, you really were saying you weren't conditioned that
Well, I
way.
didn't know. I mean, I knew I was a terrible worker and that I didn't want to be working for other people, but I wasn't sure I could do my own thing, my purpose, because, like you say, we're conditioned to think in terms of get a good job, get the company or stay with a company that takes care of you and retire, and you get a gold watch or something at the end of the 50 years. But people that have a purpose, they're not happy doing those things. And I think most of us have a purpose. It's simply that we don't find a way to live it out. The statistics as far as workers go indicates that most people are unhappy in their job. So which means that they would rather be doing something else, most likely their purpose. But very few people get to actually do it.
And so when we think about living our purpose, it really, when you think about that worker mindset, you have to come from a different place, because you can find something that you're really talented at, singing, writing, even helping others, therapy, coaching. But if you have that worker mindset, it would still feel like you have a job for yourself. It doesn't really, because you're approaching it in that limited way of how is it going to fulfill my bank account, and even though you don't want it to
Right.
be, because it feels dirty, like contaminating it, there's still that need that I don't have the freedom to create what I want. I have to be practical with my money, and I can only have so much doing. There's an idea of the starving artists, right? You can't make an extraordinary amount of money. It's like 1,000,000 to 1 to really make it big in anything, and you just have to, lower yourself to get just enough. And so, how do we shift that?
Well, let me ask you something personal. That way we
Ooh,
can
okay.
get to the good stuff.
Okay.
When did you realize you had found your purpose?
Well, I always thought my purpose was to write because it was something since I was a kid, I would write and I had a typewriter and none of my siblings liked to write. And I was this strange kid that I liked to write stories and I read a lot of science fiction. I was a romantic science fiction. And I always thought I wanted to write, but of course everyone said, you can't make a living doing that. And so I was on this journey since when I moved to Colorado, I was 29. I said, I got to find out what my purpose is. I'm not meant to be a marketing executive. I'm meant to do something meaningful. And so I did a lot of soul searching and I tried a lot of different things. And I think when I realized I found my purpose is really when I became a coach, because coaching helped me take my love of writing, my love of teaching, my love of personal and spiritual growth all together, and my love of not having a boss and being my own boss and challenging myself because I knew I was a good worker. So I knew I would, I can
Work for
efficiently,
yourself.
create a business that's successful because I can count on myself. I'm not lazy. But this idea that you felt like it just fit, there's this kind of like, I would do this even if no one paid me. Like a lot of people talk about, what's your exit plan? What's your retirement plan? I can't imagine doing anything else. And so it feels like a dream almost. And so when I started coaching, that feeling of, I can express all my different interests, all my different passions through this business and this vehicle and feel fulfilled. And that's really, and there's no top to it. There's no finish line because there's always more to grow from. It's not something that can get routine, which I love as well. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I always knew I wanted to study the mind from the time that I was a kid and started reading also science fiction. I remember
You would have been
reading,
one of my readers, my fans.
reading Dune and was very
Yeah.
inspired by Dune. A Stranger in a Strange Land and some of Kurt Vonnegut's work. So to me, like that showed me, there's people that have these minds that they use their imagination, which means their mind, right? They're using their minds to invent themselves, basically, as writers, as artists, as thinkers. Then, of course, Jung and Hermann Hesse and those kind of people that just were creating whole new ways of seeing the world. So I knew that's what I wanted to do, but early on I didn't think, who am I to do those things? These people are giants, they're geniuses, or they're talented in some form or another. That I didn't believe I had that, and especially people around you. Like you, they were telling me you can't do those things. That's not for
Get a
you.
job. You're not going to be able to
Yes.
make a living doing that.
That's right. Stick to the traditional way of doing things. Get a job, go to school, all that stuff. So it took me a while to find my purpose. But when I went to college, I found my way into psychology eventually, also kind of doubting myself. And I don't blame people because people don't stop you. They discourage you perhaps, but they don't, they don't.
You agreed with them.
Yeah, they don't stop you. You stop yourself, basically. So I stopped myself many, many times. But eventually I finally decided, yes, I'm going to get a degree in psychology and study the mind properly. So once I got my degrees, then I felt like now at least I have a shot at living my purpose, right? Because the degrees don't give you that purpose. They facilitate it in a sense, but they don't fulfill it. You still have to do your work somehow. So that was the beginning of it. Once I got my degrees, I said, okay, I have a shot at doing my purpose. But like you, once I found coaching, that was the freedom I needed to express the fullness of what is the mind and how can we work with it in a creative way. So coaching again was for me too was the key to.
I think a lot of people
living my
don't realize how how the breadth of coaching that it offers such a great multitude of passions in one thing. So if you like to perform, you can be a coach, sing, you can do stage work. If you're or design documentaries about personal development, if you like that, you can, like I love to write books, and even just help others. That idea, yeah, help others. Yeah, that's the whole point. But really, grow yourself and be in that constant conversation. Like for us, finding each other, I think, because we both had a similar purpose. I think that was really what brought us together, is that we both loved psychology and the mind. And to think that this is something I don't have to do. I don't have to study it and, I got to memorize this stuff to do my job. It's like, ooh, I want to study this stuff and now I want to share what I know. It's almost natural and it doesn't feel like work, which is really wonderful. And that, I think, when you live your purpose, it doesn't feel like work. Of course, you have to work and you have to build it. If it's a business, you have to have the structure and you have to have discipline and all those things. But the actual act of what you're doing, it's just coming from this other place where it's like you would do it even if you weren't being paid.
Yeah, which gets us to the next question. How did you get to the point where fear didn't stop you anymore?
Well, I remember when we moved to New York and I first started shifting from being a hypnotherapist and seeing people in my office and have a full practice in Denver, to moving to New York and starting to work virtually and really get into coaching. I was really afraid of making that transition, leaving that. It's like almost like leaving my job, basically, because it became a job. I had to show up at the office, and I love the virtual work, but I wasn't sure if I can recreate it again. And I remember sitting, meditating, and thinking about, what if I fail at this? What if I failed? And I kept going to, well, then Rob would leave me and then I would be out in the streets. I mean, I really let my mind just keep going. And then what would happen? And then what would happen? And then finally I was like, okay, I'd be naked in the street. Who cares? If I don't care, then no one's going to even notice me. And I'm going to freeze to death because of the elements and I'll die. And then I'll be a soul and I'll be okay. And I was like, okay. So there's really nowhere to fall. And I remember thinking of this beautiful light behind me of my true self and falling, letting my ego just keep remaining stood, and a part of me just falling back into the comfort of knowing that the true me has got me. And it's I use a lot of visualization when I understand higher concepts, and I kind of allow myself to just fall into this beautiful nothingness and everythingness. And it really made me realize there's really nowhere to fall. You can't fall. So why not try? Why not just go for what you want? I think a lot of us, the initial fear, the initial ego's voice will tell you how terrible it's going to be. And if we just believe it, we don't even question it. And I just kept questioning it and opening it up, moving toward it. And then after that, everything started to work. Clients started showing up because I faced my deepest fear. And I think we teach this in our training, and our coaches teach us to their clients, is that you have to go toward what you're afraid of. And if you're not afraid to fail, then you have all the power of the universe within you. How about you? When did you first?
Well, I mean, I have to admit, it is scary to be your higher self, or to act out, or to live your purpose. Mm-hmm. It is scary for many reasons. One of them being that most people do not understand what you're doing, right? They see you as an outsider, as somebody kind of going in the wrong direction.
You're breaking the rules. You broke the rule of you got to have a 9-to-5 job. We're all, in that, that movie, the producers, where the guy's unhappy and they're all doing the accounting and just kind of stuck. That's a perfect example, that visual of everyone just stay here. Why would you want to change? It makes everyone uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other reason is that you're entering the unknown, because as you find your purpose, the thing that you want to do, it's never been done before. If it's been done before, that's not your purpose. That's somebody else's purpose, and you're simply copying it.
Yeah. You're just living someone else's
Your
purpose.
true purpose has never been done before. You are here to do it, and that is scary because you're moving into unknown territory. You're entering the unknown, and the unknown is the scariest thing.
Well, you
for
have to
a
rely
human
on
being.
yourself, right?
Yes. You have to rely on your imagination, and you have to be brave, brave enough to say, "This is worth doing."
So what was that point for you where you faced the fear and did it anyway?
Um, I think goes back to coaching because when I worked as a psychologist, there was always that net of, well, I'm a psychologist, I'm working as a psychologist.
Get a
and
job at a hospital or
I can teach, I can do clinical work, hospitals, clinics, whatever. But as a coach, you're inventing yourself fresh in a new way. And once, let's say, I was able to apply the higher principles, the principle that the mind is the cause of your life, that it's really the cause, and you have to live it. In other words, it's not just an intellectual exercise, it is that you have to live in that reality that your mind is the one creating that reality. And it's it's very scary, but once you learn to trust in that, then you see that it works. You see that, oh, okay, it's a universal principle. It's like gravity. It's there. You can't see it, but if you test it enough, you realize, yeah, it's a constant.
it's almost like for me too, it's that fear of failure is like, well, how is failure going to happen? It doesn't align with that I create my life, because then if you're saying you're afraid of failure, that means you don't trust yourself and you don't trust in those higher principles, and you're looking for something external to come in to soothe the fear. And so I see a lot of people when they first start doing the work they love, they're looking for that comfort in the external, looking for that client to sign up, looking for people to like their Instagram, looking for relatives and friends telling them you're doing a great job, and they're looking for that external validation. And when it's not there, they get into fear and they forget, or even an obstacle shows up, they forget, oh wait, I'm creating this, so if I can create that, I remember thinking, if I can create failure, I can create success, but I'm creating it both. That's the shift, right? When you think that the mind is the cause.
And also the higher principle that says that there is no failure. Everything you do, you can learn from. So where's the failure if you can learn from it? It's giving you information. So the practice of non-attachment was really the key for me as well, to understand that whatever I do is going to give me more information about what's possible and what's not possible. Therefore, there is no way to lose. And you just keep going.
Don't you think too that just that idea that since you are when you connect with your purpose, that there's a higher power within you that wants to make it happen? So it's like trusting in that you're supposed to be doing this, that this is what you're meant to do, and so you're supported. Like having that type of, I don't know if it's faith or understanding. What do you think?
Yes, it's faith and more like a trust.
Yeah.
Trusting your own ideas, your own feeling for what you're meant to be doing, and trusting in that, and saying that is the most important thing for me. Like giving it priority instead of prioritizing what other people think you should be doing, or what you were taught to think.
So how does someone know what their purpose is? So if we were, like for me, I kind of knew, I don't know how to explain it. I guess we have to explain it, but like it just feels that, yeah, like a yes, like hell yes, like this is it. Where there's a lot of sometimes confusion and ambiguity when we don't know, and we're like, maybe it's this, or grasping for something. I think, like you said, of well, that looks good. I'm just going to copy what that person's doing, or this looks good, or this looks safe. This might be my next step. And I've seen a lot through the years of being a coach for 20 years now, showing my age, that a lot of coaches, they start off doing this type of work that we do, personal growth and spiritual work. And then they see all these business coaches making all this money and they think, oh, okay, that's what I want to do. And they lose that. And I know I said that before in our earlier episode, that it's like we make sure that when it's your purpose, that you would do it for free. Like you love it so much that if you won the lottery, you would still wake up every day and say, I have to do this. This is who I am. It's not what I'm doing to get something. It's, I have to do it because it's something I need to express.
Yeah, I would say that the first thing is that it's not a profession. Your purpose is not a job. It's not a profession. It's not a certain type of industry or profession that you exert. It is the fulfillment of your heart and soul, meaning that when you're doing it, there's nowhere else you feel you need to be. You're doing what you're here to do. And in doing that, you find yourself, meaning that is what you're here to do. Like a tree is meant to express its shade and its branches and its beauty. Your life is the same way. It unfolds in this natural way, and it's meant to express something unique. And when you find that, you trust it and you say, I'm just going to do this. I don't care what society says. I don't care what my family says. I just need to do this. And of course, it's challenging. It's not always the easiest thing, again, because we're moving against the current of the herd, as Jung says. The herd mentality is always wanting us to conform.
So what you're saying actually is opposite of what a lot of people believe, is that when you live your purpose, everything flows. Where actually, when you live your purpose, everything you feel like you are swimming against the current. And so a lot of people misinterpret that, oh, this must not be my purpose because there's a current coming at me and it's pulling me away. But it's really the social messaging and the social structure of our society of no one's supposed to enjoy what they do for their life. You're supposed to work and hate your job and then retire and then save up for retirement, and maybe your later years you can have fun. That's kind of how everything's pretty much set up for us. And so it's really about that idea, right, of you're doing it because it's just something you have to do.
Yeah, it's certainly not the easy way.
Yeah.
You
do it because it's hard, like Rilke would say.
Yes, and we recently went to Kitty Hawk, or passed by there. The Wright brothers.
Oh yeah.
They were not doing the easy thing. For them, the easy thing would be to run their bicycle shop and stay in their lane.
And they tried. It's really amazing the where they were and why they picked Kitty Hawk, and they tried 400 times. 400. How many things have you tried 400 times? I don't know. I don't even think I tried 400 times. Maybe I did over the course of the years trying new things. But that persistence and that he saw a bird and he said, we have to find a way to do what the bird does. If the bird can do it, we must have the mechanism to do this, and that possibility. And if you go to the museum, if you've ever been to Kitty Hawk, you see all the letters where they're writing for asking for donations to keep this, their experiments going, and they had to rely on donations. They couldn't, their bike shop didn't give them the resources. So it's like, what are you willing to do? How much are you willing to look like a fool even, and to feel rejected and all those things for your purpose, like loving it so much that nothing can stop you. Yes. Even when it's really hard that you're saying, I'm not giving up.
That's right. And so it's that one-pointed mind that you believe it so much, and you know that it lights up your soul, which is the third question we wanted to answer. What lights up your soul? That you're willing to do anything for it because you know this is what I'm meant to be doing. And it might put you through difficult times, but it's always worth it. It's the only worthwhile thing to really do, right? To do that purpose.
Well, I see the purpose as more, like you said, it's not a career, but I think all of us, our purpose is to know who we really are. And so when you say what lights up my soul, what lights up my soul is my own growth. There's people I hear all the time, oh, I'm tired, I'm exhausted from personal development. It's like, how could you be exhausted? It's supposed to be invigorating and inspiring. If it's exhausting for you, you're not doing it right. You're doing it to fix something. You're not doing it to go to the next level and with yourself. So for me, like looking at my dreams, using visualization, reading higher knowledge, the Gita a million times, and higher knowledge, and I read something last night, a book I read probably about 20 times, and I found something new in it. And it just lights me up to be like, wow, this awareness, this is so cool to know myself and kind of how the psyche works and the universe works in such deeper ways.
What book was that?
It was called Jnana Yoga by Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda. It's a wonderful book, very, very timely. And the idea was that, we have to remember that we are one. We are the self. There's only the self. There's only this true nature that we have. And all the little problems in our life, all the work and all the, relationships and children and all the health issues, we have to think about are tiny in comparison to who we really are. And if we understood who we really are, we wouldn't be afraid anymore. And so for me, my purpose is what lights me up is understanding something in a deeper layer and then sharing the knowledge. So if I just learned it for myself, I think that would be great. But I think the piece that I really find is needed for me and my expression is to write books about it, to share and teach and help others understand something that I understood that may help the other person, not to get them to change or fix them, but to share, like, why don't I share this? This might be, might help that person see things differently. Just like Swami Vivekananda shared his ideas about his interpretation of the Upanishads, and he made me understand something. I want to be that to other people. And not everyone's going to understand, but you do it anyway. You do it because that's who you are, not, okay, everyone, you got to, listen to me. This is the way. It's more, let me share this idea and let's see what you think about it. What about you? What lights you up?
Yeah, because when I think, well, what am I doing with my time on earth, this life that I'm given? I could have studied medicine and become a great surgeon, or I really contributed to society in so many ways. Maybe I should run for office or help the poor, but I always come back to this idea that the best thing you can do for others is to live your purpose, to simply express who you are, what lights you up from the inside. That's always the right answer. So you don't have to change the world like somebody else has, or do what other people have done. You simply have to go back to that idea. What lights me up? Who am I? How can I express that in a better way? It doesn't mean you're going to be perfect or you're going to be some kind of saint. It simply means you're going to fulfill your purpose, your duty as this life that you've been given, as this individual that you're living. That's what you're here to do. And as long as you do that, you're doing everything.
Well, it's like you said at one time many years ago, and our students love that idea, is you light yourself up and then you help others light themselves up. Like you're not doing it for them, but as you light yourself up, you can be a catalyst for helping others light themselves up and share that light with the world. And the world if anything, more than anything, needs to remember who they are. And it's a beautiful thing. So it's almost like they have to reinvent themselves. Like I had to reinvent myself and constantly let go of who I used to be in order to keep becoming someone new. And so that's a pretty hard concept for people because they think, this is who I am, this is my purpose in this life, and they hang on to their identity. I think a big part of living your purpose is letting go of that ego identity, letting go of that persona, letting that drive, and let this deeper wisdom within you act through you. It's less arrogant, less attached, but more just expression and moving through, like a movement.
Yeah, that's another quality of the purpose is that it's always moving you to a new space because it's not static. It's a dynamic living thing.
Yes.
Therefore, every year, every few years, you're reinventing yourself.
I always feel like last year I didn't know anything. This year I know so much more. And I was like, well, I look forward to next year. But that idea that you should never be exhausted with understanding yourself because it's like a mandala. There's so many fragments of ourselves that we need to reclaim and understanding of just how things work in a much deeper and direct way. So, yeah. So this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed asking you these questions as well. I hope this has inspired you to start asking yourself these questions. What lights you up? What would you do if money wasn't an object? And are you trying to live a purpose that's a mimic of someone else, or are you trying to really carve your own way? And I also believe that you can do what you love and make a living out of it too. It doesn't mean you don't do it for the money, but it doesn't mean that money is absent from it.
Yeah, that's right. Because that's the ultimate. If your work is doing your purpose, then you've found success. That's real success because you're doing what you love, and it is your job essentially. So everybody wins.
So when you live your purpose, you cannot fail. All right. Well, we'll see you next week for our next episode where we're going to talk about how to work with failure and how to use your mind to succeed in a deeper way. And we're going to end our series. So have a great week. And if you are watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, push the button below. Or if you are on Buzzsprout or Spotify or iTunes, please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episode of Soul Sessions. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.